Welcome to the first episode of It's Chalked, a podcast for Call of Duty esports fans. I'm Preston Byers, and I work for .esports.com as an evening editor. Before we get into the actual episode, I just wanted to quickly go over some things. Firstly, the name. If you follow competitive CoD, you've heard It's Chalked before. I personally don't like the phrase, but I also thought it'd be a good idea to torture myself a little bit by using it as my podcast name. I guess I hate myself. I don't really know. Next, the format. I don't really know what I'm doing here, and that'll become pretty apparent shortly. But I want to try to talk about some recent news in COD esports every week. Sometimes I'll have a guest, sometimes I'm sure I won't. Hopefully, it'll be all right regardless. And this week, I do actually have a guest, Zach Lange of eUnited. He's a good guy, been a friend of mine for I think a year or two now, and he's been following COD for a long time. So we're going to discuss who we think will make it into the franchised Call of Duty League next year. And we're also going to talk about the big news that Treyarch is developing the 2020 COD title. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the CWO Pro League. All right, let's get into it. So the best place to start here is probably COD franchising, which is taking into effect in 2019. Well, I guess whenever the COD drops, so like November 2018. But franchising is starting, and 5 franchises have already been announced. The cities are Toronto, Atlanta, Dallas, New York, and Paris. So there's going to be 12 teams, I think, in the inaugural season, correct?
Yeah.
So 7 haven't been announced yet. So the going back to the confirmed ones, Toronto is owned by Overactive Media, which is Splice. Atlanta's owned by Cox Enterprises and Province Incorporated, which Cox is a internet service provider. Province, in according to this email, is what is this? A financial advisory firm. Don't I'm not sure what that is, but yeah. So they own that, and then Envy owns Dallas. The Mets owner, Wilpon, owns New York, and Contact Gaming LLC owns the Paris spot. And like we were talking about in the pre-show sort of thing, Contact is basically owned by the former owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Um, the really messy situation with the Dodgers where they had to sell the team, and they were like the husband and wife were getting divorced and everything. But so I think it's the father and son that own that spot for like the Paris org. So I think that's what's happening there. And then, so we're going to talk about the other 7 teams who we think will end up in the inaugural season and where they'll be located. So, do you want to start off with who you think is going to be, or like who you think are some good candidates for the final 7 spots?
Right. I mean, I think all of the teams in the Overwatch League are good candidates to varying degrees. I mean, all of them have lots of capital at their hands to expend. I don't think capital is the issue here. I think it's simply is it a good fit for their brand and what they want to do moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
I do see that there are. I think there's a couple of slam dunks in the group that haven't been announced. And as we know, all of the Overwatch League franchises have first right of refusal. So I definitely there's got to be more, right? Like there's got to be more Overwatch League teams that we don't know about that have bought into this league or have begun the process.
I would I would think so, but when it comes to the Chinese teams, I think that they're not interested because I like. I mean, I could just be flat out wrong. I do want to preface this by saying that this is like all pure speculation, and that if it ends up that we're all wrong and people call us idiots, like I already know I'm an idiot and I was speculating in the first place. But I don't think that the Chinese teams would be interested just because China isn't a big market for Call of Duty. Same with Korea. So, while I do think Genji is a really good pick, they obviously just wouldn't be located in Seoul.
Right, but who's to say that they don't pick another, they don't get
Yeah.
offered another city in Call of Duty World League? I mean, that's completely feasible. Um, I definitely think that London is a slam dunk, especially after the event that they just had there. I honestly feel like London might have been slightly a test run for what a team in London would look like.
Hmm.
And if that crowd didn't give you the answer of what's good there, I don't know what more you need, really. I mean, that was a great event, fantastic event from the spectator standpoint and also the competitive side of things.
Hmm.
And also, the London Overwatch League team is operated by Cloud9, which has previous experience in Call of Duty. I really, that's got to be like a 100% slam dunk.
I I would think so. My only thing with London is I brought this up when we were DMing that there are very few teams that are both in the LCS or the LEC and that are in the Overwatch League. So I think it's Cloud9, Optic, and G or no. There's an and Splice. So I think those are the only three teams. And so I'm thinking that maybe Cloud9 doesn't get involved, the same way that Liquid didn't get involved in the Overwatch League, and that it ends up being Fnatic in this because they were really big on getting involved in the Overwatch League, and the Fnatic owner was super pissed that he didn't get the London spot. So maybe Fnatic gets in, or something like G2 gets in. But yeah, like I don't know, I it's really hard to figure out who is going to own the London spot because the players that are from England now aren't on any team that would really, fit into London, if that makes sense.
Right. Uh, I still feel like it doesn't matter about where the players are playing. It's more so, is this a viable option for to build a fan base around?
Yeah.
Especially from a capital perspective and raising revenues through gate receipts, through making sure that people are going to the arena to attend. You have to pick cities where there would be a rooted interest to actually pay X amount of dollars to go watch this in person, right? Uh, Outside of the sponsorships and potential revenue from television, if this were to ever be televised, and also streaming revenue, there are no other real revenue streams other than gate receipts for these teams. And those gate receipts really do mean a lot. So, especially in a geolocated in person franchise where the idea is to have different arenas and to have a home team and an away team and to make this quite literally as close to a professional league in traditional sports as we've ever seen. uh so you have to look at the cities that make sense to build a fan base around, and that event, you can't tell me that London can't have a fan base built around it. Look at that event. It was insane. Uh, One of the top three events, from the players' perspective that I've talked to, the players that I've spoken with on eUnited especially, um, I mean, that was a top three atmosphere for them, like ever. I mean, that just doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen every day. So I have to feel like London is a slam dunk pick. I want to transition to another pick too. I think Boston is gonna be in this some way or another. Whether it's the Overwatch League craft group buying into the CWL in Boston, or another team getting assigned Boston, the the Northeast is always very. Uh, I feel like the Northeast has been really underrepresented in Call of Duty. Like, there's not been a lot of events in that area. I really feel like a city like Boston would embrace a team like this, and it would do very well.
Has there been a Northeast COD event, like a major one, since like
Not in a long
Philadelphia?
time.
Yeah, it might
Not in a
literally
long
be
time.
like almost 5 years since that
Yeah,
happened.
it has been a while. I think one of the reasons why is the weather, especially in the winter, is quite brutal. So
Hmm.
they picked warmer climates because a lot of people do treat a Call of Duty event as like a mini vacation
Yeah,
from a
you don't want to go
spectator's
to like a
standpoint, which
below
is completely
freezing
fair.
location.
What was that?
You don't want to go to like a below freezing location in
Yeah, especially
January.
like in January, February. I mean, it's just brutal. Um, I definitely think that kind of plays into it. There might be more resources in areas in the South or in the West Coast that might be offering better support at the venue per se, stuff like that. It's there's always contracts to be had. But I gotta feel like Boston is a slam dunk, and if it is the craft group from Overwatch League, I mean that Overwatch League team probably has the most financial resources behind it, and that's saying something, right? Because I mean, they're
Hmm.
all billionaire owners or hundreds of millionaire owners, right? So I gotta feel like $25 million buy-in for Robert Kraft and Kraft Group. I mean, that's pocket change for them.
Yeah, I I I mean I think that Comcast is like a really good pick. So Philadelphia would be a really good pick for this league, and I think Boston is as well because I think that you have to have like a New York Boston rivalry in any sport.
Yeah,
So it would just make sense for a
yeah.
Boston team to buy in for the COD league. And I know that like players probably want to play on like the West Coast or like somewhere where it's warm most of the year, but really if like Robert Kraft comes up to you and says like I want you to play for my team, you're not going to like be like, "Ah, it's too cold there in December. I need to play in like San Francisco or Los Angeles." Like no, like you're going to play where you think you're going to get paid the most, that you're going to be put in the best position to succeed. And if you look at the Patriots and you look at the success that they've had in the last 20 years, you'd say, yeah, like they're actually put themselves in the best possible scenario to win a championship every single year. So I think, I mean, for the players that really value competition and winning over like the comfortability of playing in a warm city or playing in a place where they're close to home, then those people will look at Boston and say like that's a really good place for me to play.
I mean, we both well know that Robert Kraft and Kraft Group isn't exactly running the show in the
Yeah,
Overwatch League.
yeah,
It's
I
more
know.
so they're the financiers of it. But it does go back to that rooted mentality of building a brand that's a winning brand. And teams that have experience in building a winning brand and organizations and ownership that know how to build a winning brand, that does say something. It does mean something at the end of the day. Also, those cities, like you mentioned, Philadelphia, those cities in their traditional sports have rowdy fan bases. And I go back to the idea of having cities that have to be there in person to support it. And if you can build a proper marketing strategy, if you have the right people on your team, you can build a proper marketing strategy in a city like Philadelphia and in a city like Boston, and you will get 1,500 people out to that arena,
Hmm.
and they will pack the place. If you just build it right, they will come, especially in those cities. Uh, those are going to be cities that I feel like the geolocation will mean a lot more to them because they have such a identity with their city. It'll also be interesting to see cities that might get picked over and their residents and where they go, where they kind of move to and pick from. And it'll also be really interesting to see how much of that even matters at the end of the day because we all know that Call of Duty is very organization based, but more so, it's very player based. So it'll be really interesting to see when players when players do move and are assigned to different franchises, however that happens, whatever way we don't know. It'll be really interesting to see uh, people picking teams because Kenny is on a team, or people picking a team because Scumpy is on a team, or people picking a team because Clayster's on that team. It'd be really interesting to see, as a result, the mix between in person, I'm close to this city, so I'm gonna pick this city, or my favorite players on that team, so I'm picking that team even though I'm 5,000 miles away from them.
I can't wait for Call of Duty to become a player first league, because right now I don't know what the percentage is, but let's say like 70% of the community are Optic fans, and then 30% are split up between like FaZe, eUnited, 100 Thieves, Envy.
Yeah.
Basically, that's how it is. But when all these big orgs come in, a lot of money comes into the league, and you start seeing the Los Angeles org and the New York org and the Boston org offering a lot of money to these players, and they start splitting up their teams and they start leaving these like well-established COD organizations, most notably Optic. These fans are going to be like, hey, I'm not going to root for, whoever, the most Optic players are on, but like Scumpy's on this other team and he's not with Crimsix anymore. So I'm going to root for Scumpy's team. And like, all right, Karma's on this other team. I'm going to root for Karma. I want that because that's kind of how the NBA is. Like, obviously, you have those fans that root for the I don't know, the Atlanta Hawks or whatever, because you're from Atlanta even though they suck and they don't have like, LeBron or like Kyrie on their team. But you obviously are going to have those fans, but there are those fans that rooted for LeBron in Miami and Cleveland and now with the Lakers, and that's just how it is. And NBA is
Yeah.
just growing year over year over year. Like, that league is skyrocketing, and I kind of want to see that with COD, because I do think that there's a ceiling when everybody basically is just rooting for mostly one team, and then like to a lesser extent these other four teams, when you could just be rooting for a single player and then still be watching these other teams because it's fun. Because like I just have like a really big problem when Optic gets knocked out and then you see the viewership drop, like with London.
Yeah.
This is a
Yeah.
really hyped event and we're having like eUnited versus 100 Thieves in the grand finals, two of the most popular teams in the league, and they are not outdoing Optic's numbers in viewership, which is really
In like a
frustrating.
quarterfinals match. Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's crazy.
people brought up like, oh, it was really early, but it's like Optic's game against United earlier in the day, which was like at 7 a.m. Pacific time. That did more that had more viewership
Then grand
than
finals.
the grand
It's
finals
crazy.
did like 4 hours later. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. And that's just how Optic is. Like, that's how big their fan base is. And
Yeah.
then I don't want to like Optic to go away. I just want the viewership and the fandom to be spread out more than it is right
Oh,
now.
definitely. I think with the geolocation of the franchising and with the geolocation of the league, I think we're going to kind of see that more, because as organizations take a support role in just assisting in the day-to-day operations, but it's not branded as an organization, I definitely think we're going to see uh, that kind of start to take place, where people start to follow cities more and have city identities, but also player identities a lot more. We're gonna have one of the cities form a super team or something like that,
Yeah.
and everybody wants to hop on that bandwagon. I think the goal for this league is, in order for it to be viable, it has to have a blend of traditional sports to capture in new fans, but it cannot stray away too far from the path and be completely just something we've never seen for the traditional Call of Duty World League fan. So they have to find, people at League Ops, people that are running these teams in their cities respectively, have to find that balance too. And I think that's going to be really important moving forward.
I I think that there should be some embrace when it comes to how COD players are, because I think we've seen this with other leagues where like the players are very outspoken and they might be a little bit drama filled, but you kind of like to a certain extent you want that, but like you can't get rid of the entire thing, you know? Like with I don't want them to become like a cookie cutter league. I want the personalities to shine and them to be able to really just speak their minds without, worrying about offending someone. And I think that there is like a little bit of a worry there because if you look at other leagues, I think the NBA 2K league, they really like harp down on like, oh, don't do that, like don't embarrass yourself or whatever. It's like that's the fun in it though. It's like you want
Yeah.
those guys to talk
It's
trash.
trash talking video games. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's what's fun about it. That's what's like different about COD and like Gears is like way too
Whole nother
much,
level,
but
let me
yeah.
tell you.
But like COD, it should stay there. It should stay with trash talking. They should embrace it. They should promote that stuff and promote the rivalries because that's something we need. Like there's a whole generation of COD fans that like fed off the Nade Shot versus Aches rivalry, even though it was like they were pretty cool for like most of the time. Just like that one time in 2012 is like the thing that sparked everything.
Yeah.
All right, so like we're gonna stay with this topic, but let's move on to like one specific team, and that's Optic Gaming. We talked about them a little bit earlier, but everything that's going on with them and the future of their organization is in the hands of Infinite right now, who are in the process of selling the organization. Uh, Reportedly, the front runner is Immortals, and Immortals has no interest in anything other than the LCS spot.
Hmm.
And if Immortals were to buy Optic Gaming, they would basically just take the LCS spot and then they would sell everything else, including the Overwatch League spot because they can't hold two, and the Call of
Hmm.
Duty team. What do you think happens with Optic Gaming's Call of Duty team at such a turbulent period?
It's a tough call, right? So you have not only do you have Optic Call of Duty, but you have Optic CS:GO. You have MIBR, which is another top 30 team in CS:GO right now. You have a lot of parts here to be compartmentalized, and I have to feel like at the end of the day, I just don't see it. I don't see Optic in the future past this year. Uh, is that to say that they might not hop back in once the league hopefully expands with success? I mean, maybe, but I have to feel like I mean I don't know, but I have to feel like it's just not there. I have to feel like that they're not going to be a part of the league in 2019 with Modern Warfare.
I would, I, well, I definitely agree in the inaugural season, unless I don't know, like Hex buys Optic and from Immortals, and then buys a franchise spot. Like that's just a lot of ifs, and I just don't see it happening. But before the next COD drops, I think that I think the most likely solution here would be Infinite sells Optic to Immortals. Immortals sells Optic to Hex, and Hex tries to do whatever he can to get in for the second season of the COD League. And uh, I don't, I don't
My
know.
biggest thing with that though is, and we don't know, we do not know at all.
Yeah,
But
speculation.
if Infinite wanted to sell their, if Infinite wants to se- if Infinite wants to sell out their entire holding company, right?
Yeah,
They can compartmentalize that deal. They can sell the LCS spot to Immortals and sell everything else to Hector. But it
they
appears to
could.
be that that isn't what is going to happen. So then Hector has to go through Immortals to try to get back all of his trademarks and all of his, you know, everything from the Optic
Yeah,
branding itself.
everything he's
That
built.
just makes no sense. If Immortals straight up has already said, and we don't know if they have said this, but from all the indications, it appears to be Immortals has said, listen, Infinite, we're buying you for the LCS spot. Everything else we couldn't care less about. If they are that upfront in their negotiations, then how hasn't this already been split up between you get this and you get this? But apparently that's not what's happening. So if Infinite sells everything to Immortals, at this point, why would Immortals sell half or more of it back to Hector? That makes no sense.
Well, according to Kevin Hitt, he said that Immortals has their bid is much lower than the one that Hex has made. And the reason that Infinite is really even considering Immortals is because they have some personal thing with Hector. Like, they don't want to sell it to him.
Right.
Which is like, first of all, it's petty because, like,
Yeah.
you're an
I mean,
organization.
that sounds quite petty of them. Yeah.
And second, like,
Do we know if that's true? I mean,
yeah,
I wouldn't put it past them, but I mean, there's no way to really truly know that unless you're in the room with it.
And like, if that is true, that's just bad business, and that shows why you guys didn't do well operating Optic. It's like,
Yeah.
you have more money on the table. This guy is offering you, let's say, $5 million more. I don't know. I'm speculating again. They offer you $5 million more. You take $5 million more than you had. That just makes sense. Like, I don't have a business degree, and I would do that because that's smart. But if they have some personal vendetta against Hex, I don't know why. But if they do, then that's going to complicate things because then Hex has to go through more people in order to get something back that he built and that he's owned for most of its life. I don't know how they end up in the COD World League in the first season. And really, with like this is going to be like the Overwatch League where teams have to build their new brands that are
Right.
specific to the league. So Optic wouldn't be in the league. It would be, the Houston Jackals or whatever, whatever they
Yeah.
end up naming their team.
Brand it. Yeah.
I just don't see them in the league.
I don't see Optic in the
For
league,
2020.
but I could easily see Hector in the league. And what I mean by that is maybe he doesn't acquire back the branding Optic Gaming and he doesn't run a CSGO team and all the other parts and pieces that come with that organization. But if you mean to tell me that not one of these 12 Call of Duty World League franchisee teams would offer a large salary for him to be a general manager in this league, you're out of your mind.
Yeah.
He would wreck this league if he was a general manager. He would be a top 3 contending team in the franchise league off the rip. And he knows everything there is to know about this scene because he has built the most infamous brand in this scene over the past 8 years, 7 years, whatever, however long. There is no way that there hasn't been a team that's contacted him, been like, hey, keep us in your back pocket because if this thing doesn't work out, we're prepared to offer you the world and you get to run the show. And I feel like he would. I don't know him personally, so I can't say I feel like he would take that. But that is an opportunity right there. I hope he would take it.
For sure. I think he's one of the smartest people in esports. If you can build the biggest brand in a single esport and basically one of the biggest brands in gaming in general to that level, he's got to be a super brilliant guy.
Yeah.
So let's try to wrap up the franchising talk by giving the 7 teams. You don't really have to name 7, but just like a couple teams that you think are definitely going to be in the inaugural season for the COD League.
I think after the original 5 that have been announced, I think Genji makes sense. They're not going to be in Korea, but they will have a spot.
Yeah.
They will be operated with their success this year and how well they've done in Black Ops 4. I can't not see them in the franchise league.
Yeah.
So just chalk that as Genji TBA City. I think London makes too much sense. I think Boston makes too much sense. And then you kind of get into this weird situation where there's only like 3 spots left, but there's a ton more Overwatch League teams that could still buy in if they want to because they have first right of refusal. And I feel like one of them out of the list I have here of Los Angeles, but it's Los Angeles Gladiators, so it's the Cronky group, which is LA Rams, Colorado Avalanche, Denver Nuggets owner. They might diversify their portfolio a little bit more and buy into this league. Philadelphia, owned by Comcast, like as we mentioned before. San Francisco, owned by NRG, uh, could make sense. We haven't really named a lot of West Coast teams.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have the organizations that have been in Call of Duty esports now for several years, but don't have an Overwatch League spot. So where do they go? Do they operate? And this is very well likely. Do the Call of Duty brands that don't have a spot in Overwatch League, do they partner up with an Overwatch League team and say, hey, we know that you know nothing about this scene, so we'll operate it for you for a year or 2 years, or however long? And I feel like you have teams like 100 Thieves that could fall into that if they don't get their spot on their own. eUnited is kind of like the 1B to 100 Thieves 1A. I feel like those two brands have strategically aligned themselves to be part of part of the franchising that could buy in to the league, or could partner with a potential Overwatch League team and do the day-to-day operations. But you also can't leave out teams like FaZe Clan, who have also been, part of this scene for half a decade now or longer. Of course, Reciprocity 2 is a great startup brand that has been in the Call of Duty World League now for 2 years now. I could see them partnering with an Overwatch League team that doesn't know what exactly they're doing in this scene. They just think it's cool, or they just think it's a good opportunity. So my final 12. I'm gonna give you a final 12. I don't want to beat
Gotcha.
around the bush. I think it's London. I think it's Boston. I think it's Gen G. That makes 9. I think one more buys in, and I think it's LA. It makes too much sense. You can't not have a team in LA, and Overwatch League would have first right of refusal again. So one of the LA teams, I think the Cronky group makes more sense. And that leaves 2 spots. And I think these 2 spots go to endemic COD organizations, and I think it's 100 Thieves, and I think it's eUnited. And I think that is the 12-man league.
Yeah, I think I might agree with you on everything actually. I'm trying to think. So I'm thinking obviously you have the first 5 that have already been announced, and then I think the more that we talk about it, I do think Cloud9 gets in and they grab London, and that ends up being really good for COD. And then I think Gen G gets in. They have some weird city, maybe Houston, uh, and then I do think you end up getting 100 Thieves and eUnited, because I don't, for some reason, I just don't think FaZe gets a spot. And as much as that might displease traditional COD fans, I just don't see it happening. So that makes what, 9, and then I think NRG, the owners of the San Francisco Shock, end up getting in because you need those West Coast teams. San Francisco is a big part of COD because I'm pretty sure developer studios are around there, so it just makes sense. And then Comcast, like I said earlier, so Philadelphia gets in, and then who else? And Kraft. Let's say the Kraft gets in at Boston, and then you have your 12, and that's a really solid 12 for a league that, for a game that really doesn't get as much viewership as you would really like.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think FaZe, real quick, I think FaZe is one of the top contending
Yeah,
teams
yeah, yeah.
to either get a spot on their own or strategically align themselves to do day-to-day operations with an Overwatch League team that bought into the league. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that the only three teams that don't have an Overwatch League team, I think the only three teams are 100 Thieves, eUnited, and FaZe. Those are the
Yeah.
only ones that I would even like really consider, unless it's some like random, billion-dollar owner that is like, oh yeah, Call of Duty, why not? So uh, I think those three are the only ones, and I just don't think FaZe would bump eUnited or 100 Thieves out because I just think like United was obviously like really close to getting an LCS spot, so I think that they just must have the backing. And 100 Thieves is obviously really big, even though it's relatively new. So I think those 12 are good. I think we named really similar teams because it would just make the most sense for those teams to get in and those
Yeah.
cities to be involved in the first season. So let's just switch gears here a little bit and talk about the new report by Kotaku that Sledgehammer has been bumped from the 2020 Call of Duty title and that Treyarch will now develop a new Black Ops game in 2 years. This is according to Jason Schreier of Kotaku, and he reported yesterday that Activision told Raven and Sledgehammer that Treyarch would actually lead development on a new Black Ops game, and that Raven and Sledgehammer's work would actually be made into a single-player story mode for Black Ops 5, which will be set during the Cold War. I'm not sure if this meant that the entire game would be set for the Cold War or whether just this campaign would be set for the Cold War. Either way, it seems cool. I really like Treyarch games, so I can't really be upset about it. But there is a little bit of a worry because they have even less time to work on a Call of Duty title. And people are already complaining about this year's title and how it feels rushed and that there isn't as much detail as there were in Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 2. What do you think of this news?
I mean, it was kind of out of left field, right? I mean,
Yeah,
nobody
for
really
sure.
saw this coming. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think the reactionary takes were initially very poor. I do worry about the overworking of Treyarch employees. Like,
Yeah,
God bless them,
definitely.
because this industry has been known to have developers and programmers work 80, 90, 100-hour work weeks, which really is just unacceptable at the end of the day. But that could be a whole podcast in itself. Uh, but I feel like it's just Treyarch taking over the game and finishing it up and putting, some polish on it. Uh, I can't not believe that Sledgehammer and Raven have pretty much already completed this game to a rough extent. I mean, they're probably at this point in the game in alpha testing, uh, or getting close to being at that point. So I really just feel like this is Treyarch coming in, gathering up the troops. I still believe Sledgehammer and Raven are involved in a support role.
Yes.
Uh, so to have Sledgehammer and Raven be involved in a support role in the background, have Treyarch come in and really, if I know anything from other developers, it's they probably have separated the team already, and half of the team is working on updates and patches for Black Ops 4, and the other half of the team is working on the new project. I really don't think it's as big of a deal as what people.
Yeah, I it's definitely big news because, well, first of all, just the fact that Treyarch is going to basically take some of its developers that they have right now that would presumably be working on Black Ops 4 and putting them on a new project and helping and putting them on Black Ops 5. I worry about, again, like you said, the developers being so overworked because
Yeah.
they're basically working on two major projects at the same time. And I mean, they would traditionally have an additional year to work on a game, so they could really just like kind of forget about Black Ops 4 when a new COD comes out. But now they got to work on everything at the same time. It's just it was just a weird thing for them to announce. Like I'm fine with Treyarch games. I love them because like they're my favorite developer out of the three. So I'm fine with another Treyarch game. It's just a little bit worrying that it might be rushed or it might be just overkill for these developers who have to work, like you said, 90, 100-hour work weeks.
Yeah.
And in this report too, they also Schreier also said that Activision executives have started talking about maybe going to a free to play model, where this has been popular with Apex Legends and League of Legends and Fortnite recently. So, what do you think about that? Do you think COD would actually go to a free to play model? Because this is like one of the like major titles that are still $60 every year.
Right. Um, I could see it in some regard. I definitely think there's going to be like campaign multiplayer zombies or multiplayer blackout. Like there's going to be a combination of game modes that are behind the paywall, but maybe one of them is offered for free.
Yeah.
So maybe the battle royale mode that they come out with is free to play. Anybody can play it, and just the accessories are locked behind. Accessories don't change your gameplay, but they cost
Yeah.
$2 for a loot box or however much. I could see that. I couldn't see multiplayer not being part of a $60 release.
Yeah.
Or yeah, like there's just I feel like we've just been in this cycle for so long, and the cycle works. I mean, Call of Duty is a top 3 annual selling title in North America every year. It's either number 1 or number 2 or number 3. And I mean, I can't feel like they're not going to keep something behind a paywall of $60. But I could see them letting up in some regard.
I would be okay if they just said, all right, $20 for multiplayer, $20 for zombies, $20 for battle
Make it
royale.
completely a la carte.
Yeah, I would just buy the $20 multiplayer, and like I wouldn't actually be mad about paying $20 every year. But $60 seems like a little bit of overkill, especially when you include the DLC content that comes out throughout the year. So, like I don't really see Activision saying, "Hey, let's just make it free," because again, like you said, they break their own records every single year with their releases, so they don't
Yeah.
really need to go to a free to play model.
I would like to see the DLC be part of the free to play,
Yeah, that was a
because
big
I think
complaint
that's the
too.
most exploitive part, honestly, of the video game industry is just giving you an incomplete from a consumer standpoint. It makes complete sense from a developer standpoint, from a publisher standpoint, because people are gonna pay it. The market's there. I mean, if people are gonna pay $40 for your DLC, then charge them 40 damn dollars for the DLC. I mean, they're
Yeah.
gonna pay it. But I would like to see from a good consumerism standpoint and being um, a, a more respectful company to consumers' wallets, I think that would be an awesome way to go. Where they just say, "Hey, $60. There's no frills here. You pay your $60, and we're gonna update the game 4 times in the next 10 months, and you're gonna get everything that comes with it. And here it is."
Yep. But like you said, they don't need to do it because people
Don't
just do it
need
anyway.
to,
Yeah.
but I do feel like, and this is a whole other topic, but real quick, I do feel like corporate responsibility is continuing to creep into like everyday life. And when we see more corporations like doing well by their employees, it does affect people's mentality of them.
Hmm.
I think EA had a really big problem with this. Was it last year when they had the Star Wars release that was just terrible?
Either last year or 2 years ago, but I remember all the microtransaction complaints.
Oh my god! I mean, you could not play that game and unlock, like you couldn't unlock Luke Skywalker until you played the game for either like 100 hours or you paid $20. It was the most exploitive thing I've ever seen. And they got so much backlash from it, they had to change it. Like, people are getting fed up with lack of respect for consumerism. And I think you're starting to see people kind of be like, hey, look at what Epic Games and Fortnite gave us. They gave us hours of endless entertainment for free if we don't want to pay for loot box. So, screw you. I don't want to pay for your title. And it's really kind of opened the floodgates for different ways of thinking about how to charge consumers. And it's for the better, really.
Yeah, I don't like. If I had to predict, I would say that they don't go to free to play, but DLC becomes like included in everything, like the new maps and everything. But
Yeah.
obviously, cosmetic items still are locked behind, COD points or whatever they want to call it, because
Yeah.
that just makes sense. Like that's what you should do as a developer. You should, release maps and everything like a normal person would. But this is the last we'll talk of the COD topic, and then we'll go on to the CWL Pro League. How do you think an annual release affects a franchise league? Because with the Overwatch League, they obviously just play Overwatch. Like it's been out for several years. League of Legends, they only play League of Legends. It's been out for several years. How do you think going from Black Ops 4 to Modern Warfare 4 to Black Ops 5, how do you think that affects a franchise league?
The biggest transition will not be an annual release. The biggest transition is eventually this league is going to move to PC. I don't know when that's going to happen, but that's going to be the biggest transition. Some people have already said it's going to be 2020. I don't know if it's going to be that soon. It very well could be, but that's going to be crazy for this scene, and that's going to be the bigger change. I know that doesn't directly answer your question, but I feel like
It's
the
an
annual
interesting point
release
nonetheless.
yeah, I feel like the annual release part of it is like not a big deal because everybody in this scene currently knows how to relearn a game
Hmm.
and knows how to relearn, you know, what this game offers versus what last year's title offered.
Yeah.
Uh, so that isn't really a big deal because it's kind of like clockwork for these guys at this point. I mean, look at pros like Clayster and Tommy. I mean, they've learned 7 Call of Duty titles like the back of their hand.
Yep.
I just don't see that. I mean, it's always an issue. It's always a thing that gets brought up, especially at the first event, like the first in-person event. Everybody's like, "What is going on?" Nobody knows what's going on. But I think the bigger transition for these players is going to be a switch to keyboard and mouse.
So let's briefly explore that then, the PC and mouse thing. So I think that it would definitely coincide with the Activision and Sony partnership ending. Because right now,
Yeah,
people on PlayStation get exclusive content to Call of Duty stuff 7 days before people on PC and Xbox do. Whenever that
I thought it
ends,
was
which will
longer than
be,
that, but okay.
yeah, well, it used to be a month,
Yeah,
and
I
then
thought it was still a month. Huh, I'm
no, they
behind.
just 7 days, so like people don't have to wait until the event actually ends to get it.
Right.
Activision, you're stupid. But I would think that whenever that deal ends, whether it be 2020 or 2021, 2022, that would be the perfect time for the league to be like, yeah, we're moving to keyboard and mouse. We don't have a partnership with Sony anymore, so we don't have any obligation to them anymore. So, like, man, that's gonna really upset people. But I definitely agree with you that it's eventually gonna happen.
It's going to change it's going to change the landscape of the pro scene
Well,
because
yeah,
not
there won't
everybody's
even
going to be
be.
able to pick it up.
I mean, like there are guys that are really good at CS:GO and everything, and are already good on PC. But man, like there are guys that are just gonna like disappear, and they're not gonna be around anymore.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have this influx of Overwatch League pros or CS:GO pros, or
Mm,
it doesn't really matter
yeah,
like what game, but like guys that are just really good on PC, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, I can make some money playing COD now, so I'm just gonna do that, and
I can't wait. It's gonna be great.
it's gonna be great for people that are really good at PC games, not not the guys
It's
that
gonna be great just to watch on the spectator side of
yeah.
things. I think you're gonna see it grow even more so. I mean, name a tier one, tier two esport that's played on console anymore.
I mean, don't diss Halo like that. Like Halo's so great.
Halo is nowhere near
I'm
anything
just
at
kidding
this
with you.
point. Upsettingly, I mean, it seems that they have just shot themselves in the foot multiple times, and they've really taken a back seat. Maybe 10 years ago, but not today. I mean, all of the tier one, tier two esports are played on PC. If you want to play like the big boys and compete with them, you're going to have to kind of adapt to their ways.
Yeah.
I mean, CSGO, Dota, League, they're all played on PC, keyboard and mouse. And I think you're going to see that this league, sooner rather than later, will make that transition.
I I don't see a way for it not to do it, because I feel like you just have more possibilities. It's just easier to resolve problems on PC than PlayStation because you're still relying on Sony at that point. If something
Yeah.
happens, it's on Sony, and Sony is not there to fix everything. You can just fix a PC. You can't fix PlayStations like that. So it's going to be really, really drama filled, but it's definitely going to happen. Just, I guess it's a matter of when, not if. And final section of the show, let's talk about last week in the CWO Pro League, and then look at how things are shaping up for next week. So last week, Optic Gaming went 4-0. They beat Genji, Reciprocity, FaZe, and UIU. And on the flip side, Luminosity went 0-3. They lost to FaZe, EG, and Midnight, with EG and Midnight sweeping them. So first, do you see Optic as the best team in Division A? And
Oh yeah,
is
no doubt.
okay. That's
That's
not.
not even. I don't even think that's. The records might not show it, but I don't think that's even close right now.
Well, they did have to play with Zuma for the first like 4 or 5 matches or whatever, while Dashi was figuring out some visa issues. So I
Yeah,
don't know what their record is with Dashi, but it's got to be really good actually.
yeah.
And is Luminosity like what is going on? Like they have some of the best players in the world. They have John and Formal, who were COD champs MVPs, and they have Gunless, who's arguably the best player in the world. So what's going on with them?
I think. Well, first off, I don't think Gunless is the best player in the world at this game.
No,
I
but
think that.
like just sheer talent. I think that if you put him up against most pros in any other game, I think that he is the
Oh
best.
no, I mean he's a top five player in terms of his potential and in terms of his ability.
Yeah.
Uh, I just simply think that team. I just think they're on a losing skid, and they are in a mentality right now that just isn't healthy for and conducive for success. And I mean, it showed. They came out flat this week. I believe the week before, um, the last time they were playing was back in March, before London, and I believe they lost to several people in their cross division play. They lost to Envy, if I remember, and they lost to Team Heretics.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I do believe they beat us. I do believe they beat eUnited in a best of five. I think it went game five, um, if memory serves me right. But they, for the most part, within their last 6 or 7 Pro League matches, they've only won like 1 or 2 of them. And they went to London. I don't believe they placed higher than top 8. Is that correct?
Um, Luminosity. What did they get?
Yeah, they placed top 8.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not bad, but it's not. their standards.
Well, it's a pretty big
Uh,
drop from winning Fort Worth, and like they even got fourth in Las Vegas. So
yeah,
something is like this is their worst event, and
yeah,
they're playing the worst that they ever have in the league. So it's just like
yeah. It just seems like they're kind of in a rut right now, and they can't dig themselves out of it.
I think the only solution here, and I don't want to be like, I don't like when fans say, "Oh, just drop someone, like it'll be fine." But at this point, your entire mentality is off, and you can't beat EG or Midnight. You can't even take a map off of these teams. There's something wrong. Like you just don't get swept by teams that are like about middle road if you're supposed to be a contender for a championship. That's just not how things are. Like Optic's not getting swept by these teams. They got swept by 100 Thieves who won London. So you only get swept by the best teams on your worst day. You don't get swept by Evil Geniuses or Midnight in this case. So
Yeah,
I think the only way is maybe to drop Classic, maybe drop John. I mean, depending on how other rosters shape out, you could pick up a really good player. Like, I mean, Spacely's still a free agent. He could probably help, at least from a leadership standpoint. But I, I just don't. I just don't see a way for them to fix anything. I mean, they're obviously not going to qualify, or like you can obviously qualify for playoffs if you don't finish in the top four, but you just don't automatically qualify.
right.
Like,
The play-in tournament's gonna
yeah.
be, yeah,
So as long as they can make a roster change before that play-in tournament, I still have complete faith that they can be one of the top teams in the league. They're just going to have to go through the play-in tournament with a new roster because this one just didn't work out for whatever reason. Maybe it's personal issues or whatever, but there's a lot of talent on this roster and they're not doing well, and that usually means that there's just something not right about the team. Whatever
I
it is.
disagree. I really do. I think that they can solve their own issues. They just need a leader from within to step in and guide them.
I
And
think
I
it's a
think
little too far
Formal,
gone. Oh no, go ahead.
I just think a player like Formal can step in and with his leader, with his experience, he can be the leader that they need. That roster's too talented not to have success. And I mean, they've had success, obviously, but uh, there's just no way at this point to call it too far gone for me. It's just been kind of recently that they've stepped into this. It hasn't been the whole competitive cycle. So I'd like to see them continue to try to work on it.
I think the reason I say it's too far gone for them is because you're at a point now where it really is like we have to do something now, or like we risk not being at our best at the end of the year at champs. And like they certainly could. I'm speculating again. This is going to be a theme of this podcast, I think, where I just speculate like wildly and get people to hate me for it. But I just think at a certain point, you need to say we need to step up. Which, if nobody's done that already, then like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, if you go to London, you get top 8, and then you come back to the league and you're just getting crapped on. Like, shouldn't you have said this beforehand? Like, if they come out and they beat Optic this week and they beat Gen G, then, or not Gen G, FaZe. No, 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 no. Wait, what am I looking at? LG plays Optic, LG plays Gen G, and LG plays UIU. So if they go 3-0 this week, I'm an idiot. But if they don't, then they obviously didn't they don't have the ability to say like let's just step it up, like stop playing bad, like get your crap together, let's just go back. Like they just can't do that apparently. And I just don't see a way for them to get out of this without one of them, two of them getting replaced. I think that's a good place to stop it, right?
Yeah,
All right. So uh I want to thank you because you came on, you made it more interesting. It made it actually good to listen to, I think. I mean, I'll listen back to
absolutely.
it. So thanks to Zach for coming on. You can follow him on Twitter at Zachary Loves It. You can check out his work at eUnited at eUnited.gg. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
right on the main page, and then also on the right-hand side, you can click on the news tab and find everything dated back.
Yep, see, you can do that. He has actually really great work, and it's really fun to watch eUnited's content creation, whether it's the video team with the Ascent or whether it's you with interviews and feature stories on them. So go check out Zach's eUnited work and check out his Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at PresBuyers, and of course, follow the podcast Twitter at It's Chalked. We'll be posting there kind of regularly, talking about COD. Hopefully, we'll have a podcast episode every week. I'm aiming right now to record it between Thursday and Sunday, so I can have it out before the next Pro League week starts. So I think that's what we'll do. I'll let you know if there's any changes, but I will actually stick to this podcast whether people like it or not. And so in whatever podcast platform you listen on, whether it's iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anything else, make sure to subscribe, rate us, like us, whatever they do on that specific platform, do that and be nice about it. I think that's it. Thanks for listening, guys. All right, it's chopped.